I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you will find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs. 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Hello, Aaron. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Frank. How are you?
So I just heard you're going to Montreal.
Yes, sir. I will be in Montreal next weekend, which means unfortunately, I will not be gracing all of our fans with my presence on the Friday afternoon. So apologies in advance for that.
Oh, wow. That's sort of kind of almost fantastic that you're going to the Montreal Grand Prix. You know, it's an international sport which hasn't really inhabited North America until recently. They had a race in Miami. They've always been in Montreal, but it's the first one, I guess, what, since the pandemic?
I think so. Yeah, this is the first Montreal race in about 2 years. This is the first time they've had a race in Miami. They have considered having races in other parts of the states, but it never seems to be as popular as the already ingrained series like IndyCar. Well,
Yeah.
to a lesser extent, IndyCar and basically NASCAR.
Well, it isn't to the majority of people, but you know, when it comes to Canada, it's I'm not saying it's split, but it's pretty close. You know, I mean, in the U.S., it's a different story. It's like NASCAR is NASCAR, then Indy is Indy, right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely the way it seems to work, though. There's the definite hierarchy. There's the
Absolutely.
there's the souped up street rods, and then there's everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's start with the Canadian Football League. I watched that game against Calgary. Montreal looked like they might have pulled it out, and then some of the things that happened in that game. William Stambik got hurt. This is a guy who was the best rusher in the Canadian Football League for the past few years, a punishing guy. He gets hurt.
It's the first game of the season. Everybody's just coming out of training camp. Not everything is there necessarily, but that was definitely something that they didn't need to have happen. So,
Oh no, not that
but
team.
hopefully he'll be back soon.
Yeah. Other than that, Paredes did what he does best. He came back for another year with Calgary and kicked a couple of field goals, and uh, a good game for Calgary.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, they were down 24-14 at the half. So for them to come out with a victory and outscoring the Alouettes 16-3, that's pretty significant.
So Mosaic Stadium in Saskatchewan, otherwise known Regina, they post a surplus for the first time since opening in 2017. What does that mean?
Well, according to the city of Regina's latest annual report, that Mosaic Stadium has actually lost money for the city for each year since officially opening. However, last year, I mean, they've had deficits of anywhere from $417,000 to almost $6 million. Last year, however, it seems that the stadium showed a $578,000 surplus in operations, so that'll be awesome.
Yeah, good for them. It
Yeah.
a tough situation, new stadium, 10 games a season. It requires other dates for other things, and they're very passionate CFL fans. In fact, I can tell you that some people feel the ticket prices are getting a little expensive, but you want a venue like that, you're going to have to pay for it.
No, and the thing is, the city of Regina actually gets a $12 per ticket,
Yeah.
is from the stadium. So the fact that it's now finally showing something like that, especially after being basically abandoned for 2 years, is a good sign.
So live golf. If nobody's heard, it basically the PGA is a little ticked enough so that they've taken some guys off their. They've they basically taken away some players' PGA cards. Tell us about this story.
So, as some of the people who follow our show on a regular basis know, there is an upstart group operating out of Saudi Arabia called Live Golf. They had their first event in London this past weekend. and basically it's $25 million to the winner of each tournament. So it's a very lucrative pot, and individuals can sign contracts there for anywhere from $50 to $150 million. So it's a very rich series. It will actually end at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago golf course. So that gives you just an idea of roughly the places that they're going to be playing. But as it currently stands, I believe the PGA has suspended 17 golfers who decided that they were going to jump ship. So that means that they are no longer able to play on any PGA Tour events until they renounce any participation in the Live Golf stable.
Yeah, so we lost the last winner of the tournament.
Yep.
Pretty sad. Well, it is what it is. Like the golfers said, I heard a couple of quotes, and pretty much what it's about is, well, look, I'm getting towards the end of my career, and this is an opportunity to make good money. I want the opportunity, if I have to choose, I'm going to go where there's more money, and it doesn't matter who's running it. Doesn't matter, I'm not political. I'm just a golfer. Some people feel differently, but that's the way it goes, Aaron.
No, and there have been some golfers that are trying to justify their participation based on the backlash that they've received by saying, well, we're serving as ambassadors for the sport and trying to empower youth and be good examples. And if I can do that by jumping to another sports promotion to expand my reach, then so be it. I'm going to do it. So that's,
Golf Canada says, oh, sorry.
No, I was just finishing up.
Go. Okay. Golf Canada says athletes are free to speak on social justice or safe sport issues. Freedom of speech. Golf Canada says athletes have it. Oh, that's convenient.
Well, Pascal Saint-Onge, that's Canada's Minister for Sport, had indicated and said that NDAs contradict the very principle of safe sports and safe sport itself. However, Golf Canada was saying that its non-disparagement clause is designed to discourage public criticism of Golf Canada and its partners. However, it's never been Golf Canada's intent to preclude athletes from speaking out about issues related to safe sport. During onboarding, athletes are specifically reminded about Golf Canada's commitment to safe sport and educated about how to report any safe sport concerns to their third-party reporting service. Bobsleigh Canada, Skeleton, and Boxing Canada are national sports organizations that actually have NDAs. The BCS clause prohibits athletes from divulging or conveying anything that will result in a conflict of interest with BCS and in any way harm, result in, and or cause detriment to BCS in any way whatsoever. So, but what they're basically saying is, look, some organizations have NDAs, but you are free to speak about anything that's not us.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Let's go to hockey, and the Bruins. Cassidy apparently was offered the status quo before being fired by the Bruins. I guess he didn't accept the status quo.
Well, he was apparently informed when he went to speak to the general manager that everything was going to be hunky-dory. Sweeney, the general manager, apparently showed up at Bruce Cassidy's house Monday to inform him that even though we said status quo, guess what? You're not coaching the final year of your deal. So that's thrown a bit of a monkey wrench into everything.
That quote wasn't very status.
Nope.
Sergei Fedorov, odds-on favorite for Red Wings head coaching job.
So, yeah, it doesn't look like they're going to try to bring Babcock back. He's apparently very happy where he is. But, yeah, Sergei Fedorov has been rumored to be in the running for a while. And Vegas odds makers actually are leaning very favorably towards him actually being the head coach. So it looks like they're trying to reunite some of the old guard and some of them that helped the club to Stanley Cup success. So we'll have to see if that works.
How much the two things relate? The Maple Leafs apparently have moved on from goaltending coach Steve Briere. They're probably moving on from their goaltender, and I think it would only make sense that once they decide who their goalie is, they find somebody or find a goalie coach that they know the goalie that he can coach is coming. You know what I mean? There has to be a pretty good relationship between your number one goalie and your goalie coach, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and that was, I think, part of the issue They didn't fully vet Dusty Emu, who had a good relationship with Jack Campbell in his previous iteration, not realizing Dusty Emu's past, which led to his firing into Briere being brought in. Now, Briere's been there since 2015, 2016, so he's been around for a while. I think they were looking to replace him when they brought in Jack Campbell to bring in somebody that they knew could coach Jack. But the social media backlash that they received from that hire without fully vetting him led to Jack having to work with a coach that he may not necessarily have been 110% okay with.
What do you think the odds of him coming back are? What do you think the odds of Campbell coming back are?
I'd like to say that he is, and it's a lead pipe cinch, but unfortunately, the way that the Leafs have themselves right now with the salary cap, it's a bit of an issue, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of goaltenders out there that have a lot to prove, and a lot of goaltenders whose stock has dropped, that if you hit the lottery, if you know what I mean, you can, because they did it pretty much with Jack, right? I mean, he wasn't, he wasn't a hot commodity when he came here. The 1.6 million that he was making was, that was what he was making. That's what his value was pegged at. So the Leafs will hope to find somebody in that $2 million range, I think, in the hopes of bringing him in. We still have another goaltender. The question is, can that goaltender become the number one goaltender? That's the question that the Maple Leafs and their fans are going to be asking.
And they find themselves in a rather difficult position here because whoever they have past Mrazek and past Campbell is a bit of an issue. I mean, you're looking at Hutchinson, you're looking at Wall, you're looking at a whole bunch of guys that are basically.
They've got a good young goaltender, Aaron, but he's a couple of years away, you would think.
No, most assuredly. He's not, unfortunately, he's not quite ready yet. Goalies do tend to mature later. Same with defensemen when it comes to this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Mike Smith had an absolutely fantastic year. He turned 40. So you can understand, a little later in the career, you have to be patient for these things. And fans want to win now, right? They don't want to wait.
And it's tough being a goaltender. I mean, when I sit here and look at what Mike Smith did and accomplished, right? I mean, he really, how hard is it to be approved by the fans when you consider Mike Smith offered up goaltending that Edmonton didn't know they had, didn't believe they had, and the fans wish they had different. And I think he did pretty good in the playoffs. Yeah, sure, he had some games that people defined as bad, but really, not every goaltender can play every game really well. And we're looking right now at two goaltenders that are fighting for the final spot in the Stanley Cup final who've had better games this series.
Yeah, and the problem is when Mike Smith didn't play as well as he did previously, he didn't get the scoring support that he needed.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's an issue as well because Colorado found a way to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. And from there, Hyman, Puljujarvi, Yamamoto, all these guys needed to step up and score more. Unfortunately, they just didn't. So it didn't quite work out in Edmonton's favor in that regard.
So Rangers fan arrested after knocking out Lightning fan with a vicious sucker punch.
I don't know if you saw the footage for this, Frank.
No,
but
I didn't.
It was bad.
Is it on this link? If I hit this link, will I see it?
Yes, that link will take you to it, and
I will have to watch it. And it's not film. It's just here it is, film.
Yep. Now they call it a fight, but it's not
after
really
the game,
fight.
right?
Yep. And that guy is out.
Wow.
Yeah, tagged him right in the off button.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Now James Anastasio of Staten Island has actually been arrested. He's facing 2 counts of assault, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, and 2 counts of harassment. It's because he reportedly assaulted a witness who attempted to stop him. According to the officers, the witness sustained pain and bruises on his face, but did not undergo medical treatment. No word as to the initial person that had been struck. Now, MSG did release a statement which says, and I quote, Give me just a second here. It's taking its time
He's
loading.
not coming back to Madison Square Garden. That's what they're going to say.
Basically, last night an abhorrent assault took place against a Tampa Bay fan at the conclusion of the game, followed by a second assault against an individual who bravely intervened. First, we ensured the victims received appropriate medical care and have followed up to provide support for our guest services team. Equally important, we are cooperating fully with law enforcement as this is now in a criminal matter. The assailant will also be banned from the Garden and all other MSG venues for life.
Surprise!
All guests, no matter what team they support, should feel safe and respected in the Garden. This has and always will be our policy. Now, the usual number of Twitter lawyers have, of course, been out there saying, oh, well, if you lip off, you should expect to get punched. It's free speech, not consequence-free speech. And yeah, but at the same time, nah, you know what you're doing is illegal. Don't do it.
Oh, I shouldn't laugh because I hope that guy's okay. Unbelievable. And unfortunately, fans will be fans. Not all of them. The odd one. There are always the idiots, that rear their ugly head. It's no different than, road rage. That situation. It's a lot like road rage. Not a good thing. Best to not enter into the discussion. It's always the best point of view, but then sometimes that male gene kicks in. Gladly, and it's clear that he won't be going back to Madison Square Garden, and I think he's going to be short some change too.
Mm-hmm. No, the way that things going here, it's entirely possible. So
yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, okay. Number one picks Stamkos, Lafreniere, slug it out to cap strange Game 5.
Yeah, I mean this all happened after the final buzzer and after Tampa Bay had won 3-1. Kucherov threw one at net, and then the Rangers apparently took offense at the fact that he took a shot as the game was ending. So number one draft pick Steven Stamkos and number one draft pick Alexis Lafreniere both decided they were going to drop the gloves and go. Now it wasn't a tilt like a tilt, but they were both swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
So
and they're not big hitters.
No.
So they're swinging and striking out a lot.
They were. It was almost funny to watch, but at the same time, you could sense the frustration.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Angels resort to nothing but Nickelback walk-up songs amid 14-game losing streak.
Yeah, they've been having a bit of a rough patch. They've been trying to do anything and everything they can to shake it. So they decided as a gimmick, hey, let's go with the most hated band in North America here and see if we can't choose all of their walk-up music based on that and see where it goes. So yeah, it didn't happen. Didn't work. They got shut out.
Well, the Jays were on a good tear there, and they were just about to sweep the Royals, but unfortunately, the Royals bats said, hello, 8-4 win. Blue Jays lose the third and avoid the sweep.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, unfortunately, their pitcher Kikuchi didn't have the best game. It exposed some vulnerabilities, but at the same time, it's not entirely his fault as well. I mean, now, granted, Kikuchi did only strike out 2 batters while walking 4 and serving up 2 hits, and that was enough for 3 first-inning runs. But that's 2 more than Kansas City had scored in its last 4 games against the Blue Jays.
Absolutely. So, let's move over to soccer. Canada defeats Curacao.
So this is the friendly that was brought in to replace the game that was that was
brought
canceled.
in to replace the game that was brought in to replace the game.
But at the same time, this was also CONCACAF Nations League play, so they couldn't skip this game.
Nope.
But yeah, a 4-0 win was a rather emphatic statement. Curacao did actually have some players that were injured and a few other players that were not able to enter the country because of their vaccination status. So this is what happens with that. But yeah, it's 17,000 on hand. Davies scored 2 goals, which was great to see. They replaced him with Ugbo in the final 76 minute, but it was a fantastic game all around. Great to see.
What do you think of the strike that they're having? I mean, soccer in Canada right now, this is, the team is, they're ahead of the curve, if I can use that term, where the popularity of the game is now just, it's the good team first, then the popularity, and with the popularity come opportunities, whether it be with commercialism, advertising, ticket prices, television contracts, all those things that help make a body, a soccer body, make money. This is basically the conversation, in my opinion, Aaron, isn't about what they can get today. It's what they're going to get tomorrow if this
Yeah,
gets popular, right?
and at issue apparently was that some of the funding that should have been allocated to them seemed to have disappeared, and Soccer Canada was actually skimping out on supporting other sports underneath their umbrella.
Right.
So,
Well, they have a little reputation of that. The CSA has not had a stellar reputation when it comes to how they do things. If I'm not mistaken, in the past they've tended to take care of their own, and by that I mean the management team. So hopefully that's not what's going on now. And if there's a sniff at that, hopefully they'll do what is commonly expected, I think, around the world when it comes to soccer teams. The motivation to win needs to not be distracted, Aaron, and that's my concern here.
Yeah, well, Atiba Hutchinson did say yesterday that they were glad to be able to get back onto the pitch. They'd come to the room and they'd sat down with the organization, and now it was time for the lawyers to lawyer, and we're just going to go out and try to play soccer and get that done. So,
as they said in the 60s, right on, baby.
Yep.
CF Montreal signs technical head Renard to extension for an indefinite period. Indefinite period?
Yeah, it sounds like one of those, for life sort of things.
Or something short of a year.
Well, yeah,
weird stuff, man.
Yeah, it had reached a new deal with Olivier Renard to head its technical team for an indefinite period. He's going to serve as vice president and chief sporting officer and will sit on the organization's executive committee. He'll also continue to report directly to president and CEO Gabriel Gervais. So they basically, when they say technical team, what they refer to includes coaching staff, technical staff, therapy staff, and doctors, who are all going to be reporting to Olivier Renard. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Dozens of border officers reprimanded for misconduct, documents reveal.
So this is an investigation that's been ongoing for a while now concerning, the way that the CB Canadian Border Services Agency, there we go, behaves at the border.
Easy for you to say,
right? Oh, I've been stumbling over my tongue all day today. They've been reprimanded for misconduct over the past 2 years, including preferential treatment and associating with criminals, basically enabling people to smuggle stuff into the country that really shouldn't be here.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of concern that there's two things you don't want crossing this border: guns and drugs.
And based on the increased occurrence of armed carjackings across Toronto recently, I think more guns are getting through.
And that's not good. We need we need to make sure that our people at the border are doing their job, and hopefully they're paid enough that they don't have to get involved in that kind of thing, Aaron. That's the other thing. Canada Post says it will have a fully electric fleet by 2040.
That's the goal. Basically, they've actually spelled out today the different steps that they're going to take. They're basically looking at electrifying. They've got 14,000 vehicles that they basically need to electrify and reach net zero emissions by 2050. They've actually earmarked $1 billion towards doing that. Doug Ettinger, he's the president and CEO of Canada Post, says it's based on expertise and the availability of electric vehicles, which are currently not easy to acquire because of the pandemic and the computer chip shortage. So they've had to extend it a little bit, but they're basically planning on building electrical infrastructure support at about 350 of their depots for letter carriers.
They're going to need a lot of charging stations. One of the things that is a problem with an electric vehicle is charging stations and how long it takes to charge a vehicle. Now, the good news is if you're using it for work, you have time to charge, right? On a personal level, if you're crossing the country, that's an issue that I wonder about. What do you think of electric cars? Do you think we have the resources and the ability to this, because there's an infrastructure for electric vehicles that includes mining certain minerals and that basically are not a lot of in the world. One of the places is in Russia, the Ukraine. So what do you think of? Is it just a matter of making the cars, or do you see any hiccups in the future? What are some of the challenges?
Well, I mean, there is still also you have to consider the ongoing pollution that goes along with manufacturing electrical vehicles. Sure, they're great once they're made, but you have to take into account the cost of fossil fuels and the exhaust and the pollution that causes when you mine and
Right.
ship and refine and ship back and create and ship and create again and assemble and all of that. But
Yep.
once that's finally done and the vehicle is finally on the road as an electrical vehicle, it's fantastic. There's just a lot that takes that a lot to get there. So
And they have a longer life too, right?
They technically speaking, yes, they should.
Right.
So,
Because of the process of how it moves, it's
mhm,
not as angry as a gas powered motor.
indeed.
That's just my terminology. Because I probably, if I was intelligent, I'd probably use the proper terminology. All right, urgent measures must be taken to ensure rights of Canadian children, says the UN committee.
Yes, there's a United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child that says it has serious concerns about the welfare of Indigenous children in Canada. Now, the committee has reviewed Canada's progress on implementing the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and they're saying that urgent action is needed on discrimination, independent monitoring, abuse and neglect, and standards of living. Um, In particular, they're talking about Canada's failure to implement basic rights for all 8 million children living in the country. Karina Gould, the Family, Children, and Social Development Minister, was unfortunately unavailable for comment, but a lot of it stems back to discrimination against Indigenous and Black Canadian children living at home and in alternative arrangements like foster care. So the continued discovery of unmarked grave sites near former residential schools is an ongoing concern as well, because those children are now adults and are not receiving the support that they need.
They need the support. Hopefully, they'll work things out. One of the great artists in Canada, Justin Bieber, reveals he has full paralysis on one side of his face due to Ramsay Hunt syndrome. Oh my! At first,
Yeah,
I heard he had Lyme disease. I read some
uh, he
stories saying that.
yeah he had Lyme disease back in 2019 and early
Oh,
2020, coupled with chronic mononucleosis. It's a virus. Basically, Ramsay Hunt is a virus that attacks the nerves in his ear and facial nerves, and it's caused the left side of his face to slowly become paralyzed. Um, Basically, nothing works and nothing moves there. So it's frustrating, but he's incapable of doing shows, and I know a lot of people want to chalk it up to him being lazy, but this is a legitimate disease, and it's very debilitating. So
well, you know, the guy is a very talented guy, and you know what? He's not really been, he's just another human being in my book, and no one needs to suffer this kind of stuff. It isn't an extension and or uh, because of Lyme disease he was prone to Ramsay Hunt. There isn't a connection between those two.
mm-mm.
Okay,
Now,
so it's
according to the
totally
Mayo
independent
Clinic, it's
thing.
based on shingles. So,
Oh, okay. So then, all right, here we go. Yeah, my girlfriend keeps telling me, she says, Frank, you got to go get the vaccine.
Shingrix.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, shingles also comes from chickenpox. So
Right.
if you
If
had
you had
chickenpox as a
chickenpox, you're
kid,
a candidate.
exactly. So it's something that you need to be aware of. You need to take care of yourselves, people. Go see a doctor.
It's a risk to and a risk to not to. Okay, BC drug decriminalization in BC, an invitation to rejoin society, says former Yellowknifer.
So these are the steps that BC has taken to try to decriminalize it. minor amounts is a move in the right direction for harm reduction, albeit a small one. On May 31st, the federal government announced that adults in BC will be able to possess up to 2.5 grams of opioids, such as cocaine, methamphetamines, and MDMA, also known as ecstasy, starting in 2023. This move has the approval and the support of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police and the BC Association of Chiefs of Police. If you're a drug user, because of this, the decriminalization basically allows former drug users and current drug users to rejoin society, which is a huge thing.
Wow, that's well, they're drugs are a crazy kind of thing. When we talk about crime and decriminalization, we've seen in the U.S. where people feel that decriminalization has led to more crime. I'm not sure about this case, Aaron. Do you feel it's a necessity to do something like this? Where do you stand on it?
I think it's an important first step to sort of realizing that it's an illness. Addiction is an illness and should be treated as such. There's actually a supervised injection site in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they've actually seen petty crime drop as a result of that. And they've also seen drug-related overdose deaths drop significantly because of something like that. So decriminalizing is one step towards destigmatizing that and helping people get the help that they need for their addictions.
And what I'm hearing from you is if we keep our eye on the data, we can find out whether it is a pro or a con move.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. BC construction boss jailed and company fined $25,000 over repeated workplace safety issues.
So there's a Metro Vancouver construction company, Dalvinder Singh Kandola and G&D Construction were found in contempt of court last month. Kandola and his business had previously been ordered to pay more than $43,000 for violations of the Workers' Compensation Act and civil contempt, according to a May 18th judgment from Justice Sheila Tucker of the BC Supreme Court. Because these have been largely ignored, they said, okay, well, in treating the fines imposed to date as a cost of doing business, Mr. Kandola has put his workers at risk of harm, shown disrespect for the court, and created the appearance of operating with impunity. So he's going to jail.
Alberta orders outside review into ambulance response time for dog attack victim.
So this is something that occurred a while back, but it took over 30 minutes to get an ambulance to an 86-year-old Calgary woman who'd been attacked by dogs. They found the woman there who was injured, and she passed away. Mario Chias, who's the interim president of Alberta Health Services, says the review by someone outside the province will look into the calls to dispatch, ambulance response time, and availability of ambulances at the time. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes for something like that when somebody calls 911 is not acceptable.
Cars slide off in ditches as significant hail hits Saskatchewan.
So this is interesting because it's June. But there are some rather interesting photos that go along with it. And
it's Saskatchewan.
Specifically, Grand Coulee, west of Regina, had so much hail. It looked like about 3 or 4 inches worth of hail. And
wow.
It just, yeah. Calls went out for like multiple vehicles here. It's Traffic Services Saskatchewan reminding drivers to slow down because not only is there hail, but there were also severe thunderstorms. So,
oh my
one
goodness.
of those.
Well, that usually, they usually go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah.
Manitoba Premier promotes backbencher Greg Nisbet to cabinet to fill vacancy.
So Heather Stephenson has promoted somebody. Greg Nesbitt, specifically, who represents the Riding Mountain constituency, is the new Minister of Natural Resources and Northern Development. He replaces Scott Fielding, who announced his resignation Monday to pursue opportunities in the private sector. Now, Fielding, who he's replacing, was also Minister for Liquor and Lotteries, and that role is going to go to Andrew Smith, the former Minister for Sports, Culture, and Heritage. So this is a little bit of a cabinet shuffle.
Manitoba Premier banned from future Pride events after absence from parade.
So, on the same vein, Heather Stephenson will not be invited to participate in future Winnipeg Pride events. Now, she was invited. Former Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister spoke at the Pride rally. But in 2019, Pride organizers implemented a policy that any leaders invited to speak must also walk in the parade as a show of solidarity. Organizers said that they were told that Premier Heather Stephenson would walk at least 2/3 of the route after her speech, but she did not. Pride President Barry Karlazig says he felt that they were lied to for a photo op, so she could at least show her face, get a picture, and then take off. So they said, well, if you're going to do that, you just don't bother coming back.
Thanks for nothing. Ontario's lifting of masking rules on June 11th sparks frustration among experts.
So, as you know, all of the mask mandates are finally coming off. They're going to be lifted this Saturday. This includes for public transport and hospital settings. Now, they're still going to be required in long-term care and in retirement homes, but only recommended in higher risk congregate settings like shelters and group homes. So, Dr. Kieran Moore said, look, Ontarians should continue to wear a mask if they feel it's right for them, are at a high risk for severe illness, are recovering from COVID-19, have symptoms of the virus, or are a close contact of someone with COVID-19. Thanks to all of our efforts, we've basically helped knock it back down again, which is good. But, taking it all off now is just sort of like, yeah, we're done with it.
Are we done with it or done with the hassle?
I think they're done with the hassle.
Isn't that what it is? It has nothing to do with whether we're ready to do all these things. It's just enough.
Yeah.
Well, as long as, we've got some situations in the world, in North America, in Canada as well, where there are some spikes going on, and those spikes will cause a reaction, and that reaction shouldn't be a surprise. And I don't think it should be fought that hard, just as it shouldn't be fought that hard that people want to shed the mask, that people want to go back to normal. There has to be an ability of us as a group in society, as society, to be able to hear the message that maybe there's something wrong. We need to, just for a little short time, take more care, be more careful, do what it takes to minimize the spread, right? We got to be able to be reflexive that way, Aaron. It's just sometimes people are just so, I don't want to, it's a slippery slope. If I start putting on a mask, you're going to start making me stay home. That's the fear, I think, with some people. But I'll do what I have to do to be safe. And, I'll be paying attention if there are things going around and the virus is kicking up somewhere. If I go anywhere near that place, I'm going to be wearing a mask. We're going to a football game on Thursday. Will I be wearing a mask? I'm not sure. Will I be listening to see what's going on and how safe it'll be to go to BMO Field and be in a crowd without a mask? I'll see. And I won't be afraid to put a mask on if I need to put it on.
No, and I think everybody needs to have that sort of an attitude. Be aware, take care. That's basically what it boils down to. Now, BMO is an open field, so it's fantastic. There's great airflow and everything like that. But at the same time, we also know the virus is airborne, so you still do have to be careful about that sort of thing.
But have to be careful.
It's not them lifting the mask mandates doesn't mean that I can't wear a mask. It just means I'm not required to.
And since I'm vaccinated, I don't know how long the vaccine's going to last, but I took the vaccine and the booster because I felt it increased my chances of being not a problem in ER. So hopefully we don't end up there where our ERs are too full, and that's ultimately the bottom line, folks. We have to ensure as a group that there's a small enough group of us that put a burden on hospitals. We're still, and I want to remind folks of this, we're still putting on schedules, operations, and healthcare that was delayed because of all the extra service required for people who A, weren't vaccinated, B, who had COVID. So that's That's where I keep my mind at anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Corps police calls plummet after St. Thomas housing facility opened.
So this is actually something that's really neat. Calls to St. Thomas Police for service in the city's downtown have actually dropped more than 80% since a supportive housing facility has opened there. Now, this is directly from the St. Thomas Housing Agency, which underscores the importance of such projects in the region there. St. Thomas City Hall in Indwell, a Christian charity that provides affordable housing across southwestern Ontario, opened the 15 housing units above the city's public transit offices in the fall of 2021. Um, Once these homeless were provided with shelter, there was less of a strain being placed on the policing system for calls for aid because they weren't out in the elements. They had been sheltered. So, I mean, this is fairly indicative that if you do need assistance, you'll be able to find it. Now, they're staying in what's called the Railway City Lofts, which are geared towards people who need mental health and addiction support, Indigenous peoples, and people who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. They were introduced as part of the city's St. Thomas's approach to tackling a growing homelessness crisis during the pandemic. If you can't work, you can't make money. If you can't make money, you can't pay rent. If you can't pay rent, you're getting evicted. So it's helping to stem a vicious cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move over to Quebec. Safety board blames improper training for death at Montreal's giant Ferris wheel.
So this stems from an incident in on Christmas Day, 2021. There was a Ferris wheel at Montreal's Old Port. Unfortunately, one of the workers was killed at the tourist attraction. Uh, Riley Jonathan Valsaint became trapped in the drive wheels of the 60-meter tall Ferris wheel 5 minutes after he was asked to clear snow off the machinery while the massive structure was still in motion. So he never should have been on the platform where the drive wheels are located, said the safety board. And the safety board in Quebec is called the Commission des normes de l'équité, de la santé et de la sécurité du travail. He wasn't trained because he worked in another department. It was not a task that he was normally supposed to do, and this led to his death.
Improper training is always the most dangerous thing on a job site. Quebec officials say that 98 monkeypox cases detected, more than 1,600 though have been vaccinated.
Yeah, now that number is up by 8 cases from the 90 reported earlier this week. Now, it's a rare disease. And it comes from the same family of viruses that cause smallpox, but it doesn't generally spread easily between people and is transmitted through prolonged close contact via respiratory droplets, direct contact with skin lesions or bodily fluids, or through contaminated clothes or bedding. Quebec began offering smallpox vaccines to certain close contacts of infected people, and so far they've vaccinated 1,622 people. Alberta, Ontario, and BC have also reported cases of monkeypox, but the vast majority are currently still in Quebec. Now, the lesions that are on the skin, you are infectious for as long as you still have those lesions, those warts, those bubbles. So you need to stay away from everybody. If you are suffering from it and you do still have those, then you do definitely need to stay away from folk.
Yeah, absolutely. Must be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
August 1st declared Emancipation Day in New Brunswick.
So this is to dovetail with the Declaration of Emancipation by the British Empire. British Parliament officially abolished slavery on August 1st, 1834, which freed about 800,000 enslaved people of African descent throughout the British colonies, including, at that time, Upper and Lower Canada. So New Brunswick is joining other provinces like PEI and Nova Scotia in designating August 1st as Emancipation Day. The federal government obviously has already done so. They're following along with that.
Fantastic. All right. We spent a lot of time talking about Donald Trump and his travails in the United States. The January 6th Congressional Committee has begun their their conclusions, the conclusions that they've drawn, the evidence that they've uncovered, an understanding, the purpose being, of course, an understanding of what happened on January 6th, why it happened, and why it's important to figure out how not to let it happen again, Aaron. I'm sure you're not spending hours on the TV watching what's going on, but from your perspective, why do you think this is important in your opinion?
If you have a public figure who, through his speech or his actions, incites someone to violence or to take the law into their own hands in an attempt to overthrow the democratic process in a constitutional republic, you have an issue. That individual cannot be allowed to foment dissent to such an extent. I appreciate the American First Amendment, the desire for free speech. I think it's a very important right. However, at the same time, you are committing sedition and treason by attempting to overthrow the democratic process by getting an election overturned that you clearly lost. So that is something that you need to face consequences for, unfortunately. I shouldn't say unfortunately. You need to face consequences, period.
Yeah, it's a natural progression. Commit a crime, do the time. I'll start by saying this. Vladimir Putin did not kill anybody in the Ukraine, but he had a lot to say, and he did a lot. He committed, he's committed to ordering people to do such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he did it publicly, privately, is irrelevant. He did it, and therefore he's responsible for the acts of his army. In the case of January 6th, I don't think there's any doubt that Donald Trump incited that riot. And he was doing it so that he could benefit by staying as president. He was creating a distraction, and that distraction, he was hoping, would lead to the fact that the Congress could not, and the vice president could not count the votes and make the determination that Joe Biden won the election. That would have created a problem. It would have gone to the House, and in the House, Trump had the votes to elect him, not the voters, but the votes in Congress to get him elected. So he may not have been down there bashing policemen. He may not have been down there using bear spray on policemen. He may not have been in the Capitol building with them. He may not have marched down there with them. But as a person who speaks, he has a responsibility. And as a leader, he has a responsibility for how people behave based on what he does. And for me, the trigger for him going to jail, to me, the proof that he belongs in jail, that's where he should be, is that he had hours to undo the horror that was going on in front of his eyes, matter of a mile or two away from where he was, and he did nothing. In this case, this is the typical, when you hear people say you don't have to do something to do something bad, you can stand aside and let something bad happen. And he did that. And he was, he committed a dereliction of duty. And as far as I'm concerned, that should be something that breaks the Constitution that he promised to uphold when he stood at the Capitol and was basically brought in as president. He made a promise. He broke that promise. And breaking that promise, he does not deserve to be a politician. He has no right to ever be voted again. So if you think I don't like him, no, it's not him I don't like. I don't like what he did and what he's capable of doing, what he's shown us he'll do. So, but we knew this for a long time. He's gotten away with a lot, Aaron, and I have my suspicions why he gets away with it.
Yeah, I have my suspicions as to why he gets away with it as well. I mean, he's trying to distance himself by saying it's only words. I didn't mean anything by it, etc., etc. But when they're standing on the steps of the Capitol, reading out your tweets, decrying the process that's going on inside the building, and when you stand in front of thousands of people and say, "Hey, a lot of people say that Mike Pence should be hung," do I think he should? I don't know. Maybe he deserves it. His words. Maybe he deserves it. That, that to me leads to a certain amount of culpability.
A
And
total
and
amount, a total
yeah,
amount. And to suggest that what he's saying is free speech, um, we've seen racism and how uh, racist thoughts and racist plaudits are racist. They're not legal. So it's not that you can't say anything. It's that you need to be responsible for what you say and ensuring that what you say does not deny anybody else their constitutional rights. Those officers at the Capitol had a right to do the job they're hired to do, not go to war. They weren't trained to go to war. And what they did that day was they found themselves in a war, Aaron. And it was a war that was started by a president who did not want to give up power. And the January 6th thing is going to be all about just establishing that that's what he was trying to do. He maliciously, with malice of forethought, he did everything he did to try to maintain power. And that in itself, to me, should put him in jail for a lot of years, in my opinion.
and again, I don't disagree with you on that. The unfortunate thing is there does seem to be a very two-tier justice system in the United States of America. Now, whether or not that applies to an individual with perceived or estimated wealth as opposed to real wealth is something else entirely. But
Well, he won't go to jail, and the reason my suspicions are like this. It's really simple. He's not the disease, and ever since he came in, he came around. People were, oh, it's all Trump. It's Trump. No, he's a symptom. There are a lot of people on this planet who have money and power and are rich and have control and opportunity to control, who will and do take advantage. We've seen it over and over again. So to make him accountable, he would just be the first one in line to be made accountable. There's a lot of other people who enabled him to do what he's doing, and those are the people that are fighting tooth and nail hard, really hard, not to have anything happen to him because they're in line. So, that's the difficulty here. But to do something like that, to be that kind of human being and have that person responsible for the greatest country in the world, scary stuff, Aaron. Totally
yeah,
scary stuff.
if he's the first domino to fall, then that's a real issue for them, right?
Well,
So
I would call him a domino, not a domino, but that's just me.
eh,
Just kidding. And in Canada, we didn't talk about the Ford election other than to say, that obviously you feel that the election may not have been based on fact and/or, well, don't let me put words in your mouth. The election could have got a different way if information was a little more accurate. Am I incorrect?
there is that. There was also a high incidence of individuals reporting their polling stations closed and not being informed, as well as a couple polling locations having been moved. This has been reported on by a couple different news outlets, that people showed up to where they would normally vote, and hey, all of a sudden it wasn't there.
Wow.
So that is a
But do you
concern.
think that affected the end? Um,
In
was it?
all honesty, no. I
Yeah,
just think people were. I mean, we've had how many elections in the past few years? Whether it
too
be
many.
municipal or federal or what have you.
One every year.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been pretty constant. So voter burnout is potentially a thing. But at the same time, when you get elected with that few of the population actually voting, it speaks a lot to motivation. I think what
Yeah,
needs to happen is the NDP and the Liberals need to take a long, hard look at why they didn't get the votes, and
yeah.
not just rely on their own internal polling, but actually ask people why they didn't vote for them.
For their loyalists, because what we learned about elections in the past few years, it's the people who don't pick a side and do that make the election finish and be what it is.
No, that's very true. It's when the how's the best way to put this? those who don't actively participate have the biggest effect on the outcome.
Yeah, and that's a double-edged sword, right? Which you said earlier, which is what do the parties have to do to engage with the voters, and with the voters who would benefit most from what they're trying to do. So it's an endless loop, Aaron. It's a totally endless loop.
Yeah, no, it's and again, this is one of those. I know I like to say, if you didn't vote, you have no right to complain. But now
Absolutely.
I find myself in the situation where it's like, well, you guys helped decide the election, so
All
thanks for
right.
that.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Frank.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now, and enjoy your weekend.